Have you ever wondered how a princess, once declared illegitimate and imprisoned in the Tower of London, could become one of the most powerful and enduring monarchs in history? The story of Queen Elizabeth I isn't just about ascending to the throne. It's a masterclass in strategy, patience, and the subtle art of power. It's a tale of two sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, daughters of the formidable King Henry VIII, whose reigns would forever alter the course of England. But this wasn't a battle fought with swords and armies. It was a war of wills, of ideologies, and ultimately of time itself. Elizabeth never had to raise a sword against her older sister, Queen Mary Tudor. She didn't need to. Because Elizabeth understood a profound truth that so many leaders, both then and now, fail to grasp. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon you have is patience. Time, she knew, could be far more devastating than any army, far more decisive than any single battle. While Mary ruled with an iron fist and unwavering certainty, Elizabeth chose a different path. She chose to wait. To understand Elizabeth's strategy, we first need to look at the turbulent world she was born into. This was Tudor England, a realm torn apart by religious strife. Her father, Henry VIII, had broken with the Catholic Church in Rome to marry her mother, Anne Boleyn. This act plunged the nation into a religious identity crisis. When Henry died, his young son Edward VI pushed England further toward Protestantism, but his reign was short-lived. Upon his death, Mary Tudor, Henry's first child and a devout Catholic, took the throne. Her mission was clear: to return England to the Catholic faith by any means necessary. Mary's reign began with a wave of popular support. The people were tired of the political scheming that followed Edward's death and initially welcomed the legitimate heir. But Mary's certainty soon became her undoing. She believed her cause was righteous, ordained by God Himself. She launched a fierce campaign to stamp out Protestantism, a period that would earn her the infamous name Bloody Mary. Hundreds of Protestants were burned at the stake as heretics. But these public executions, meant to inspire fear and force compliance, had the opposite effect. Instead of crushing the Protestant spirit, the flames of the Smithfield fires forged martyrs. The public's initial sympathy for Mary's cause began to curdle into fear and then into resentment. Each execution, each pyre that lit up the London sky, chipped away at her legitimacy. People who were once indifferent now saw their neighbors, their friends, even their family members, suffering for their beliefs. The Queen who had promised to heal the nation's spiritual wounds was now inflicting deeper, more painful ones. Mary was ruling through fear, and as Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, she saw that fear was not a sustainable foundation for a kingdom. And where was Elizabeth during all of this? She was playing the most dangerous game of her life, the game of survival. As a Protestant and the next in line to the throne, she was a natural focal point for anyone who opposed Mary. She was a constant, living threat to her sister's reign. After a rebellion broke out in her name, though she claimed no involvement, Elizabeth was arrested and imprisoned in the Tower of London, the very place her own mother had been held before her execution. The chilling message was not lost on her. Every day was a test. One wrong word, one misplaced letter, one hint of defiance could have been her death sentence. But Elizabeth was her father's daughter in cunning and her mother's in resilience. She did nothing reckless. When questioned, her answers were brilliantly ambiguous. When commanded, she obeyed. She conformed, at least outwardly, to the Catholic faith, attending Mass to appease her sister and the court. She presented herself as a loyal subject, a dutiful sister, never a rival. She spoke softly, moved carefully, and let others make the fatal mistakes. She was a master of political theater, playing the part of the meek, obedient princess while her mind was constantly calculating, observing, and learning. She watched as Mary's allies became her enemies, as her council grew divided, and as the people's love for their queen turned to ash. Elizabeth endured. She waited while her rivals destroyed themselves. She understood that power, especially absolute power, often contains the seeds of its own destruction. Mary's fierce conviction, her refusal to compromise, became her greatest weakness. She was trying to force history to bend to her will. Elizabeth, on the other hand, understood that it was better to ride the currents of history, to let time and public opinion shift in her favor. She was biding her time, preserving herself, knowing that her moment would come. Then Mary fell ill. It became clear she would not produce an heir to secure the Catholic succession. The future of England once again hung in the balance. Even in these final, tense days, Elizabeth did not gloat or scheme. She did not rally supporters or make a grab for power. She simply continued to wait, to endure. There was no need for a triumphant celebration. She knew that true power isn't seized in a moment of victory. It's earned through the quiet accumulation of trust and hope. Mary's reign had burned itself out. It was a brief, intense, and ultimately tragic chapter in England's story. Her certainty had blinded her to the hearts and minds of her people. When Queen Mary I died in November 1558, the crown passed to Elizabeth peacefully. There was no civil war, no challenge to her succession. Why? Because England was exhausted. The country was tired of religious persecution, tired of fear, tired of the flames. They didn't want another ruler with absolute, unbending certainty. They craved stability. They craved peace. They craved a leader who could heal the nation, not tear it further apart. By the time Elizabeth ascended the throne, she no longer needed to prove her worth. The country was ready for her. They were ready for calm, not conflict. For pragmatism, not piety. Elizabeth's long, silent apprenticeship in the art of survival had prepared her perfectly for this moment. She had learned to read people, to navigate treacherous political waters, and most importantly, to understand that a monarch's greatest asset is the support of their subjects. Mary had ruled by divine law and royal decree. Elizabeth would rule by understanding human nature. She knew that legitimacy isn't just a birthright. It's a bond of trust between the ruler and the ruled. That bond, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. Mary had broken it with fire. Elizabeth would spend her long reign rebuilding it with patience, compromise, and an uncanny political instinct. And so, the frightened princess who was once a prisoner in the Tower became Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, one of the most successful and beloved monarchs England has ever known. Her 44-year reign, known as the Elizabethan Age, would become a golden era of exploration, artistic flourishing, and growing national pride. She achieved this not by defeating her sister in a grand, dramatic battle, but by quietly, patiently, and brilliantly outlasting her. She won her crown not with steel, but with silence, proving that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in the attack, but in the ability to endure. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this dive into Tudor history fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the hidden strategies and human dramas that shaped our world. Let us know in the comments which historical figure-esque strategy you'd like us to explore next. We'll see you in the next video.